In today's video, I'm going to show you everything you need to get started in macro photography. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome to another Macro Monday. In today's video, I'm going to show you the equipment that you need to get started in macro photography. So in two previous videos I'll pop them up on the screen. I did a techniques on how to start taking photos and also mistakes that people make when they first start taking photos. So this video is going to be based on the equipment that you need. Now I'm going to assume that you've got a camera of some sort. Now it literally doesn't matter what camera you have, even if you've only got an iPhone or a smartphone, you can get attachments for this to turn this into a macro. So even a smartphone, you can get started in macro photography. It doesn't matter what camera type you have or what lens type you have, we're going to get you started taking macro photos with the equipment that you've got, hopefully. Now, there are so many different camera bodies out there and camera types. I can't cover the specifications of them all, but just know that there are websites out there that if you want to know the technical specifications on conversion sizes, so if, like, for example, this is a full frame sensor and using a 1:1 100mm macro on it will give you a 1:1 ratio, all that sort of stuff, then there are websites that will do the conversions for you. But there's so many different camera types, the sensor sizes and different lens choices, it would be impossible for me to go through it on this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the basics of what you need, and I'm sure that's probably all you want anyway, is just to get a nice photo, something like this, with the equipment that you've got. So it doesn't matter what camera body you've got, whether it's a smartphone, a DSLR crop sensor or a full frame sensor, they're all going to get macro photos. It's just what you add to it to make it a macro, that's all. Okay, so that's camera bodies. Now let's talk about lenses. Now this is a 100mm macro lens. This is what you're going to need to shoot macro photos with. But this isn't the only lens that will shoot macro photos. There are lots and lots of just standard lenses that you can use to take macro photos that aren't macro lenses. There are other macro lenses as well. There's ones with 2x magnification, 1.5, 3x, 5x magnification. This is a 1:1 magnification. But you can take macro lenses. You can take macro photos with a 50mm prime. So if you don't currently own a macro lens and you're not in the market for one, there are a few items that you can buy that are relatively cheap that you can get good macro photos with. Now the first thing I don't have, because I can't find it, I've lost it. I did buy, when I very first started out in macro photography, I bought this reverse lens mount, and basically what it does, it screws to the top of your lens. So the front element of your lens with the screw threads that you normally put your filters on, it screws to that, and then it mounts backwards onto your camera. So instead of being the normal way, it would mount that way, and then that would turn this essentially into a macro lens. The second option is a set of extension tubes. Now, these tubes cost me, I want to say about £15. It really was cheap. And you get 3 of them. And the way it works is basically by increasing the distance from the lens to the camera sensor. So the greater the distance, the more macro you're going to get out of it. But obviously certain ones will have certain magnifications. So you need to play about with the different types of whether they actually do magnify if you have all 3 on, or whether you just have the 1 on. You'll have to play about with that with your camera, your specific sensor type and lens type. And then the third option, which is one that I've picked up recently, and I can't open the box, which is this one, and that is the Raynox M250. You can get the 150 as well, and I think you can also get the, I want to say 300, I'm not sure, but from all the reviews that I've read, the 250 is the best one for getting better macro shots. Once you go above that, the image quality reduces apparently. I've not tried it, so I can't verify that, but that's just what I've read. So this one here, M250, cost about 75 quid, and that just screws to the front of your lens. That's right, it doesn't screw to the front of your lens, it's a lie. That screws to the plate, which is a mount which mounts to your lens. So you screw that in, and then you get a little metal ring adapter for your lens type. Ooh, light's playing up. And it screws to the front, and then that attaches to that with these little arms, but I find generally this holds quite well. If you get it on there, it does hold. It doesn't really need the adapter, although you should have the adapter for safety, but for me, I find it holds on pretty much most lenses that I own. It doesn't really fall off, and especially on my macro, which is very good. I say 75 quid. So all three of those will give you a macro image of some sort. Now, whether it's true macro or just extreme close-up, like I said at the start, you're probably just looking to get good macro shots at the moment. You're not worried about the technical specifications. So these are the three things I try before purchasing. Like this lens, I think cost me just over £1,000 when I bought it. I think you can probably pick them up secondhand. I want to say about 400 or 500 quid now. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely aware of the investment if you do like macro photography. Let's talk about light. So as you get close to your subject, you need a lot more light to illuminate it in macro photography. So we have to add light in artificially. Now you can, I did say in another video, I'll pop it up, that I don't use sunlight for my photos, and it's not because the photos come out rubbish. You can get some really nice photos with sunlight, natural sunlight. However, I find it very, very difficult to, you basically, you'll set your shot up, the cloud goes over, you have to change your settings, the cloud goes away, you have to change your settings again. You can't get that consistency with sunlight. Whereas using a flash or something to deflect light, maybe, you can get a little bit more consistent with your shots. So that's why I always use, when I'm shooting macro, a flash of some sort. Now the different types of flash you can use, we have a ring flash and just a general standard run-of-the-mill speed light. There are dedicated macro flashes. You can get the ones with, they've got, I see them in like CSI and stuff. They've got like the flashes come right off the camera and you can angle them and change them around. You're talking, I want to say £800-ish for one of them, and I can't justify paying £800 for one of them at the moment. So at the moment I'm sticking to these ones. These are quite affordable. I think this one cost me, I think this one cost me about £80 or £90, and this one was about £30 or £40. I think this is a newer, and this is a K&F. So I don't ever stick to like the main brand. You can buy the Canon ones, and they'll probably pay extra 200-300 quid for them because they're Canon, but I find these ones work perfectly well. So speed lights and ring flashes as a must, and how you use these is going to determine the type of pictures you get. So with this, not the speed light, with the put that on wrong, with the ring flash, you're going to get a straight in front look. So it's going to be like a portrait, like studio type lighting. So it's going to be directly in front of the thing. It's going to illuminate it really nicely. Now with this particular one, you can turn off one side and just have one side on, so it gives a bit of shadow and depth to it. I don't find personally that the images still come out a bit too not overexposed, but too front on for me. But I do use it. I still use it, and I can still get some nice images out of it. But what I've started using is this one. Now this is just a speed light from Neewer, and I find that this gives me more control over the light. Now with this light, if you put it on top of the camera, like so, you're going to get directly in front of your flash, whereas you need the flash down here, you need the light down here. So you're going to need something to bounce that flash down onto your subject. Now you can do it a couple of ways. You can either pop out this little card that will give you a bounce. It's not the greatest, but it does work. Or you can buy something like this. Now this one I was using, but I've changed to what I'm using. So this one goes over the top of the flash like that, and then when you point your flash down, the light will come out from down here. I've changed that now because I found this one was really cumbersome. Like when you're trying to get in close to something and there's a tree, you're hitting it constantly, and it's just not, it's not very good. I bought this for wedding photos. That's what I bought it for originally. So that's that one. And then there's this one, which I'm just experimenting with at the moment. And now this one is a little bit easier to use. it's a little bit lower profile, so it comes to the same sort of height as the flash, and you can see it doesn't come out much further than the lens. So this one at the moment is the one I'm using at the moment, but this one's quite easy to use, so you can just stick it over most lenses and it will just bounce that flash down. Obviously you have to point it down a little bit towards the thing, it'll bounce that flash down to your subject. You can get good images with that. Now this and this is going to get your camera, your flash off your camera, which is what you want ideally. So that would go on there, and that would be a remote receiver, and then you can hold it over the side, and then you can use something a little bit bigger like this because you're holding it and you can stand wherever you want with it and control it, which is not too bad. The reason I've started using this one was just purely for the vlogs. So when I'm going out and taking photos, I've got to hold a camera and I've got to hold the tripod with the vlogging camera on it, and I can't hold the flashes at the same time. I did try a little monstrosity, so big thing, I'll pop the images up, but I found it was just too heavy and too cumbersome, so I just couldn't get on with that. So I've swapped out now just to using this thing for a minute, and I'll just play around and see how they go. But these are quite cheap. This one cost me I think £7. This one was probably about £15–20. So all relatively cheap items that you can pick up. So those are definitely a must for macro photography, flashes. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the difference that you will get between the 100mm macro, the extension tubes, the Raynox, and the 50 and 200. And I'll show you what those all do for your images. So I'm going to take, first image I'm going to take is just, so what I've got is I've got a little setup here. I've got a little back card which just stops the image, the back of the image being in the shot. I've got the little twig that I picked up with the lichen on it, the moss on it, and I'm going to take a shot using 200th of a second, f13, and at ISO 100. And that is the image with a macro lens. I'll take the same image with the Raynox attached. Now let's show you the 50mm. Okay, so that's the 50mm, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add extension tubes to the 50mm. Okay, so you can see that by using the extension tubes on a 50mm lens, you're actually getting probably, I would say, closer than the 100mm macro. Now, I'll pop the images side by side quickly and you can compare the two. So that's the image with the 200mm and the extension tubes. Now I'll pop those images up side by side and you can have a look at the difference between a 100mm macro, a true macro lens, a 50mm prime lens that has extension tubes on, and a 200mm zoom lens with macro with extension tubes on. Let me know in the comments whether you think buying a £1,000 macro lens over buying a 50 and a £15 piece of kit to get macro photos is really worth it when you're just starting out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hopefully this video has given you an idea of what you need to get started in macro photography now, and as you can see, with the combination of just these two 50 and £15 worth of kit, you can get some decent macro photos. So hopefully that's enough to spur you on to go and take some macro photos, because it is such an interesting subject, and it's limitless as to what subjects you've got to take photos of. So please do give it a go. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate that. If you haven't already subscribed, please do consider subscribing. We've got a new video, Macro Mondays, every Monday, and a video on Friday, which is landscape. So don't miss those, and I will catch you on the next one.